We're going to kick off with Adrian Mayhew, who's from Berrington. He's going to talk to us about change management. So let's put our hands together for Adrian.
Good afternoon. It's very nice to speak to you. I'm here to talk about change because whether we like it or not, change happens around us. It's easy to think that change doesn't affect us too much because we work in an industry that's long established, it's very mature, and the fundamental principles of what we do is not that difficult. We make dirty things clean again. However, a lot of things change around us. Our customers have changed, the expectation of the customers have changed. The expectation of their customers have changed as well in a lot of instances. So the environment in which we work changes around us. Just quickly, a few words about myself. Sorry if I keep turning away. I've got a screen down here, but I have no faith in it, you see. I'm Adrian Mayhew. I've been at Berrington for 10 years. I started out life as an accountant. I then worked in various roles in IT, business analysis, and then I moved into a more customer-facing and commercial role, and now I look at pricing and commercial terms. So what does that mean in terms of change? I think in my accounting days, I was an observer of change, and I think that was part of my frustration when I decided that the financial world was not for me. I went into IT and then became very interested in the idea that technology could be a driver of change. And I think what's moved on for me, and my current role, is more to do with innovative thinking, about changing the way people approach their work and think about things, because you then move on to the idea that technology is more of a tool to support your changes. Big fan of food, big fan of rugby. The picture of the English rugby team is not merely a personal indulgence, although I was at Paris for that game. But actually, that's a good example of what I'm talking about. The English rugby team grossly underperformed at the World Cup, were very disappointing. What did they do? The personnel within the team haven't changed substantially. Few players have come and go. What really changed was they changed the coach, they changed the captain, they changed the thinking, and what they acquired was a new way of playing. In some respects, an old way of playing, for those of you who remember the halcyon days of 2003, that was based around discipline and good, solid execution of their core tasks. A few general thoughts on these, and I've highlighted the key words in this. Change is the only constant. What you'll note about these, by the way, is none of these quotes are particularly new. The top one is 2,500 years old, the bottom one is from the 13th century. So change has been going on all around us for many, many years. What I like about this collection is it gives you the sense that it's about changing the way you think. It's about changing the way you approach your work, and it's about leadership. And I'm going to talk a lot about leadership as I go through the short presentation. And it's very important to get a small and committed group of individuals involved in any change you want to put through. I particularly like the bottom one, partly because it reflects my own journey, I guess, around change. Yesterday I was clever, so I wanted to change the world. That's probably me going through my technology phase. Today I'm wise, so I'm changing myself. Wise words, it's about changing the way you think about yourself, about your customers, and being innovative in the way you approach your work. The bottom line is that companies who survive and thrive in the modern world respond to change, and in some respects lead change. Your action will lead to actions from others. And the bottom quote, in case you've never heard of Norm Brodsky, Norm is kind of Donald Trump without the megalomania. He's an American entrepreneur, journalist, author, and he sums it up really well. Either you're an agent of change or you're going to be a victim of change. And that's a phrase, I use the phrase victim of change a lot in my own work, long before I knew who Norm was. You can't choose to stand still, because if you do, everything else overtakes you. So what I'm going to talk about today is based around a model by a guy called John Kotter. John Kotter is a Harvard Business School professor, and he's an acknowledged expert in the areas of leadership and change management. And Kotter works around an 8-step model, and you can read it for yourself. What I like about it particularly is it doesn't get bogged down in the mechanics of project management, which we would all accept being organised, being focused, having the right people in the right place is very, very important. What he focuses on instead is how you get people's buy-in, how you take things forward, and how you ingrain it in the culture of your organisation. And this is a very important aspect. I've only got 20 minutes, so forgive me if I shoot through these fairly quickly. You might be grateful for that. But the first step is to create urgency. The model says that 75% of the managers need to agree. It's very tempting when you get a good idea to want to get cracking straight away. But you need to make sure that you've got the buy-in at the most senior levels. This is something I've seen done well and I've seen done badly. And when I say buy-in, that's not just passive nodding because they want to get on to the next agenda item in that particular meeting. That's genuine belief that you're doing the right thing for the right reasons. You need an honest discussion. You need to create a dynamic sense of why you need to change, an urgency. Why do you need to do it? And in turn, they give you support, they give you backing, and they give you a level of emotional engagement that you require. And you will require from other people in your organisation as you try to get your changes through. Through doing that, you start to form a coalition. And the point of the coalition really is to provide you with a team and to provide you with influence in all areas of your organisation. And that's why it's important that that coalition are not necessarily your most senior people. It's actually about influence and positioning, getting the right people in the right place, than it is about positional power. Sometimes they're not the most senior people. They can be the most influential. They can have specific roles in particular areas, but they've got the reach and the influence and the respect of your people. And it's important that that coalition is capable of working together as a team. It's very, very important that change is united. People don't like change. It's uncomfortable. And therefore, any cracks, any weaknesses will be seized upon by some who would prefer not to change. So you need to create a vision for your change. Basically, the rule is if it's hard to explain, it's going to be hard to execute. Because if you can't be clear about where you're going, if your target is not visible and distinct, it's going to be very hard to hit it. How will you know when you've succeeded? And from a personal perspective, I also like the point about aligning with values, because I think if you believe it, if you've got a coalition of people who believe it as passionately as you do, change is much easier to get through. And it's important to have a strategy. Change is a long game. It's very, very tempting to go flying off, trying to get in early. You want the rewards, you want the returns, and it's very tempting to go flying in and start to realise the jam today. Actually, it's a long game, and getting it right involves changing your people. Then, of course, you move on to communication. And this is very simple. Be open, be honest. If people are concerned, address those concerns. If people are worried or resistant, please, you must address those concerns in an open forum and be seen to be acting above the table. But actually, the most powerful way to communicate that vision is to walk the walk, is to do it yourself, is to live it and breathe it, and actually present with passion and act as a zealot for the changes you want to make, whether they're commercial, whether they're operational, whatever context they work in. If you demonstrate the values you're trying to push forward, then you've got a much better chance of getting through. Step 5 sounds a little bit ruthless. Remove obstacles. If you've got areas that will conflict with people's existing roles, people's existing priorities, if your line manager tells you to do one thing, but the change agent is seeking you to do something else, you'll always stick with the things that you're being measured on. So it's very, very, very important that those conflicts are recognised and dealt with either in the role, the description of people's roles, or in the other projects people are running. If you focus people on the task, then they're going to be more dedicated. That sounds a bit trite, but it's absolutely true. The number of people who run change projects is alongside your existing role, and the change team is all a bit part-time. You're going to struggle for time. You're going to create those resource conflicts, and you're going to either underachieve, or you're not going to get the buy-in from the management team that you want. The other thing is is when decisions need to be made, make them quickly, make them decisively. Don't dither. As I say, people are uncomfortable with change, and your detractors will take that as weakness. It's very important as well to create short-term wins. There was a graphic on one of the slides I did earlier, which is a small change in a lot of places equals a big change. I've sat in meetings where people talk, what's our £1 million idea? You're putting a lot of pressure on yourself to create one idea that's going to generate large returns for you. In actual fact, if you look at our own business, Berensson Hospitality in the UK, if we put 20 pence more value on every order that left our factories, then that £1 million becomes a lot more attainable, rather than seeking one glory shot where I get £1 million or I get nothing. So focus on the short-term ones, recognise them. Keep your people focused. It's a way of creating positive pressure in an upward direction you want to achieve. The 7th step is actually one of the most important. And I draw your attention to the first point, the first sub-point on the slide. Do not declare victory too early. It's very easy to see a bit of success and think, cracked it, done, we can all go home. You need to keep up that pressure until it's fully ingrained in everybody's thinking, in everybody's behavior. Then you're always going to struggle to make real progress. And this is where the Japanese, as we know, have lots of good theories and good practice around the areas of continuous improvement and identifying errors and taking out weakness from your processes. And Kaizen is about that. And don't be afraid to bring in fresh ideas. It's not a sign of weakness to say, okay, well, actually, we're a year further down the line. Things have changed. Your market's changed. Technology may have changed. Your competition environment may well have changed. Your customers may change. You need to keep in touch with that. You need to be reactive and responsive to those things. Because I said earlier on, it's a long-term strategy. It's not a short-term fix. Step 8 really is about moving up to the black belt level of change. It makes the change part of your corporate mindset. In other words, you always look for opportunities to build on your successes, to identify where you're good. It requires a clear head. You need to be clear about what your market is. You need to be clear about what your customers are demanding from you. And you need to be clear about yourselves, what you are capable of doing. Don't overreach yourself. Make it realistic. Discuss progress at every opportunity. Success breeds success. You want a positive attitude. If people feel weighed down, if people feel negative, they're going to struggle to get their energy together to change and to work in new ways. And that can involve recognizing key people publicly. Awards, articles in newsletters, pats on the back, a weekend away with their family, whatever it is, but just something that recognizes the contribution that people are making to a changing culture. Creating that environment where you want to implement change, but actually you want to do it in a way that takes people with you. The carrot is much more effective than the stick generally in change. And then make plans for continuity. Pull it together. And keep it going. Creating that cycle where we go right up to the where, how do we get there? Go back around that top loop several times. Keep it going. If it's positive, keep your changes moving forward. And think about the future. Think about how things are going to change for you in the future. Plan ahead. Try not to react. Then you will become a victim of your environment. You will become reactive. And that's really, it's a very short presentation. It's immersively, you may say. And I just wanted to give you a flavour, really, of the kind of thinking that will help you make changes to your organisation in a fundamental way. Sometimes small ideas replicated in a large number of places throughout your organisation are much more effective than trying to go for the glory every time. In case you want to know more about Kotter, 3 of his books up there. I thoroughly recommend them. The first one is a little more academic. The one in the middle, Our Iceberg is Melting, is written in this almost like a children's story about some penguins who live on an iceberg. And the third one, if you're inspired by other people's experience, is more about companies and or chief executives and their desire to change their organisations in a fairly fundamental way, and describes how they did it and the challenges and tribulations they went through on that journey. Thoroughly good read, very readable, very easy to get through. And that really about wraps me up. Oh, finish my summary. Prepare well. Very, very important. Keep your patience, keep your focus, keep your concentration. Don't start too early, don't finish too soon. See it through. Work together. Very, very important that it's a holistic experience, change, particularly when you're trying to change cultural elements within your organisation. And involve your customers. Take their ideas, involve them, let them know that you're doing something positive. Lead by example, I hope goes without saying. I think as senior people in organisations, it's very, very important that you walk the walk. You won't get respect. You won't get the buy-in of your people if you don't. Acknowledge that it's going to be difficult. It always is. And not normally in the places you think it's going to be difficult as well. It will get tough. There will be sticky bits. Just have to keep your nerve. And learn. I thoroughly encourage you, whenever you go through any change processes, always stand back and have a good look at yourselves afterwards and be honest about what you did well, be honest about what you could have done better, and try to change yourself for next time around. Because that evolution over revolution is what's going to see you through and what maintains successful organisations in the modern world. That's me. That's a very brief run-through of Kotter's change model. I've used it. I thoroughly believe it. Thank you very much.
Okay, that was very interesting, Adrian. We really appreciate you coming in and talking to us about that.